Hello, everybody. I believe we are now live and up and running for the latest Shiji Buzz webinar. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar where we're going to be discussing today the unveiling of the guest experience trends and strategies that are supporting them. My name's Andre Valju, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. And today we're diving into some of the latest trends and strategies that range from boosting F&B revenue to embracing sustainability. And we have an expert panel who'll be sharing insights from the Shiji Review Pro's 2023 data and the power of guest reviews with a significant impact of sustainability and that on the guest experiences. And also we'll have a spotlight on the Iberostar initiatives and how a real-time hotel organization is focusing on that. So we can expect the session is going to be filled with data, insights, and actionable strategies that's hopefully going to enhance any hotel's guest experience. So we also encourage the audience's participation and questions throughout. So if you do have a question or a comment, please put it within the Q&A section, not within the chat session, because that way we'll be able to get to them. And so let me get started and introduce the wonderful panel that we have with us today. A wonderful all-women panel, I might just add, which is really, really cool. So it's great to have all the ladies joining us today. First, we have Danica Smith. Danica is the Director of Product Engagement and Strategy at Review Pro. Danica, welcome here. It's great to have you. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks for having me. Really excited to get this one kicked off.
Indeed. And then we have Alicia Alonso, who is leading sustainability marketing at Iberostar. Alicia, great that you're joining us. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you all for being here. Really excited to dive right in.
Great. And then finally, we have Laura Jafferai, who is the product manager at Booking.com. Laura, it's great to have you joining us. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for joining.
And also just a quick note regarding Laura's participation today. Laura is here to discuss the subject matter that we're dealing with today. If anybody or a hotelier that might be watching has any general Booking.com inquiries or queries, please reach out to your account manager for those specifically. And if you'd like any more information on the panelists who are joining us, please feel free to go to their LinkedIn profile. And also you can reach out and contact them through there as well. So as I mentioned, if you do have any questions, please make sure they go in the Q&A section. And I will bring up the presentation for today that Danica will be starting on. So just let me start that now as we go in.
And remember, to everyone listening in, feel free to write comments, questions, and let us know where you're dialing in from today.
Bear with me a moment, folks. Sorry.
Hi, David from Liverpool. You're the first person to give us a shout out, so you get a very special shout out. And Jennifer from Washington and Maria, thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Okay.
Switzerland, all over from the world today, Andre. We've got over 100 people dialing in from all over. Exciting.
Fantastic. That's very cool. All right, very good. So let's get started then, Danica. Over to you for you to go through the slides, and just let me know as you're ready to go.
You'll be my glamorous assistant.
Absolutely.
Next slide, please. Okay, so for those of you that don't know us, every year we actually, or sometimes multiple times of a year, launch our guest experience benchmark reports. So I'm here to share some really exciting data trends. What we're looking at here is a sample size of 9,500 hotels randomly selected around the world. So next slide, please, Andre. And next slide. So let's have a look at what's been happening with the guest experience. And if we look at global trends, looking at the GRI. Now, hopefully everybody is aware of the GRI, the Global Review Index. For those of you that aren't, a quick reminder, it's an algorithm built by Shiji Review Pro. And what we're doing is we're tracking over 145 review sources multiple times a day and putting it into an algorithm, which looks at metrics such as frequency, regency, and of course, quality. So what we're doing here is we're looking at what's been happening with guest satisfaction based on this sample size of almost 10,000 hotels over the last 4 years. We've actually analyzed over 48 million reviews over this period. And we can see that globally, the Global Review Index, the GRI, has still not recovered pre-pandemic levels. So please let us know if this is the case at your property or at your group of hotels. Whilst we can see that the GRI has improved across all regions compared to 2022, which is fantastic. And in fact, Asia Pacific has the highest GRI score, sitting at 87.1, with the Middle East having the lowest score, currently sitting at 83.3. Huge congratulations to anybody listening in today that has a GRI of over 90%, because in 2023, and definitely as we enter 2024, it's a huge achievement. So well done to all of you that have such great GRIs. Next slide, please, Andre.
Just before we get to that slide, I've got a question for you, Danica, if I may.
Yeah,
Despite
please.
the improvements that we're seeing in all the segments, why do you feel that the Global Guest Review Index hasn't actually returned to pre-pandemic levels? Is there any indication from your side?
There is actually some very key, clear indicators, and it doesn't really matter if you are a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, a resort, an independent B&B. It's the same trend time and time again. The reason, room. We're seeing a huge amount of negative mentions that's impacting the GRI negatively coming from room. And there's two main concepts here. One is perception of value, and second, unfortunately, is air conditioning. So we'll come on later on. There'll be a QR code. So listeners, get your QR code readers at the ready and you can download the full report. But it's really room that's really pulling down the GRI.
Okay.
So let's have a look at review volume and what's been happening with review volume. So global review volume has grown by almost 20% versus 2022, which is great. Remember, guys, why is review volume so important to us? Well, obviously, operationally, it's great for guest intelligence. What do I need to do? What do I need to know in order to prove my guest experience? But strategically, review volume is a key factor for algorithms. Whether that's Booking.com, Expedia, TripAdvisor, Google, review volume is one of the algorithm factors. So every review is so important. Now, across the 6 different regions, Asia Pacific had the highest growth of almost 51% increase in review volume, whereas in 2023, both Europe and the US had a more stagnant review growth. Europe only improved their review volume by 4%, and America by 5.7%. Globally, what is interesting, and it's not on this slide, but make sure that you download, is 40% of your reviews posted in 2023 were generated by Booking.com. So on to the next slide, please, Andre. So as we can see here, Booking.com, whilst their growth has kind of remained stagnant versus 2022, they are still the #1 leaders in terms of review volume market share. They account for 40% globally, and in Europe, they account for 64.8% of total reviews. That's a huge change versus pre-pandemic levels. Google has had a huge increase in review volume, as you can see here, almost 35% increase in terms of 2023 versus 2022. And in actual fact, Booking combined with Google reviews generated 69.1% of total global reviews. Incredible. TripAdvisor accounts for 9.9% of total reviews, and Expedia coming in 4th place at 5.2%. So why is this important for hoteliers listening in? Guys, you need to understand what's driving your guest satisfaction. What are your Booking.com guests saying versus your TripAdvisor versus Expedia for your property and your competitor properties as well?
And Danica, what is it that you feel? I mean, the Google's had a significant growth there in review volume compared to 2022. So why do you feel that that's the case? What do you think contributed to that surge? And how do you think that the Latin American issues with the fake reviews may have affected that, if at all?
Yeah, it definitely absolutely has. There's a famous property in Rio, quite a large property, 5 stars, super high average daily rates, and the GM woke up and she saw 1,500 new reviews entered on Google, completely fake. And what's really strange is actually it's not the hoteliers themselves that are pushing these fake reviews. Nobody really understands. It's a conversation that we had with Google, Booking, TripAdvisor, and Expedia at ITB in Berlin a few weeks back. And it's something as an industry we need to come together and really understand, what are we going to do? So for the hoteliers listening in, keep an eye on that Google increase. But the role of review distribution, Andre, has changed so much over the last 5 years between Google, TripAdvisor, and Booking.com. And like I always like to say, imagine if Instagram decides to do reviews next week, what that's going to do to our world. So I think what's the most important when it comes to understanding online reputation is that you know at your property or at your portfolio what's happening between the main review providers.
Yeah, very good. All right, next slide.
And finally, so this is what I was referring to. So here is a QR code, guys. It's a really fantastic benchmark report. The team worked really hard on it, and it's got some fantastic global stats, region stats, and city rankings. So we'll give you a couple of seconds to get your mobile phones out and download the QR code. And actually, maybe one of the Shiji team can share the link in the chat as well. And I definitely recommend having a share and having a read through that. And I also think what's reassuring with the Get Benchmark report is it just gives a lot of hoteliers a bit of reassurance. You know, a lot of the times we see not a lot of improvements year on year, a lot of red. Just know that that's a trend that's happening globally, unfortunately.
Very good. Okay, Laura, over to you from Booking.com.
Thank you, Andre, and hello everyone once again. I'm Laura. I'm product manager at Booking.com, and I look after reviews globally. And I'm here today to share some insights through our reviews content. As you just heard, we have a very large amount of reviews and a large volume. We have around 300 million reviews on our platform. And also we know that reviews are top 3 most important information for our travelers when deciding where to stay, together with price and location. Furthermore, we know that a significantly high number of users in our platform is also interested in seeing reviews from recent travelers, meaning that recent information is very important for them to make a decision. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to zoom in into some insights that we have collected through analyzing different reviews. We analyzed reviews that had a positive experience in order to understand what customer delighters are, and as well as the negative experiences, which is going to be in the other slide. But when it comes to the customer delighters, we noticed that location, view, staff and services, and some other amenities and mentions about rooms were providing a good experience. We mentioned specifically that location and view was frequently mentioned positively, especially by our loyal customers. When it comes to staff and services, it was mainly positively referenced and contribute to the overall positive experience to the travelers. And as well as other, as I mentioned, amenities and comfortable rooms were also highly mentioned in those positive experiences. Next one, please. When it comes to not so good experience, we noticed that communication was mentioned very frequently, as well as certain basic expectation around amenities and the noise, and some food-related issues. So some tips for improvements and what to pay attention of is especially proactive communication. For example, during temporary changes, like some certain constructions happening around, as well as making sure that there are good amenities and managing noise issues if they are raised. And when it comes to food-related issues, those were specifically mentioned by our loyal customers. So making sure to address food-related issues and monitor any parking concerns if they also come across would drive a better experience, and as a result, a better review.
Laura, just one quick question, if I might, regarding the tips for improvements. Does Booking.com, or how do you guys assist or advise your hotels or the properties on addressing some of the common concerns, such as noise levels and negative aircon reports or issues? Is there a way that you can communicate that to your customers?
Yes, thanks for the question. We are very committed to supporting our partners in delivering exceptional guest experience. And in order to address common concerns like noise levels or negative air condition issues, We offer assistance through different channels. One of them is through direct account managers who are always there to provide personalized support, from answering questions, sharing practical tips, and improving the overall guest satisfaction. Furthermore, we have our online platform. We have Partner Hub pages, which is full of useful information, and it features certain pages on best practices, how to improve review score, and a dedicated section on the guest insights. Guest Insights is a feature where partners can opt in and gain valuable information about their guest who is upcoming, enabling them to prepare in advance and exceed the expectations, which then, as a result, will lead to better expectations and the better review score. So by leveraging these resources, our partners can effectively tackle common issues and elevate their services.
Okay, great. And just a quick reminder to the audience who we're seeing is dialing in from everywhere. It's wonderful to see Jamaica, Latvia, Thailand. What a range. It's fantastic. If you do have any questions, please make sure you put them in the Q&A. Don't put them in the chat because we can respond to you better in the Q&A. And the chat, it's going to be too difficult to see them all because there's so many of you now. And the chats are coming in like crazy. Everyone's saying greetings from Zimbabwe, Turkey. It's incredible. It's fantastic to have so many people here. Sorry, Laura, thank you. And I'll let you continue.
Sure, yeah, thanks. Right, so now I'm going to zoom in into an upcoming change, which it's in progress at the moment, and it's about the way we calculate our review score. Just to give some more context, at the moment, we calculate the review score based on the average of all the reviews from the past 3 years. And this means that some very old reviews from 3 years ago have the same impact as review scores from yesterday. We know that travelers find recent information on reviews very important. And also we know that the expiry period being 3 years is a pain point for some partners, as old reviews reflect an outdated information and can set some wrong expectations with travelers. Furthermore, we also know that partners want to impact their score faster than we do currently with the current system. And that's why we see an opportunity to improve the matchmaking between travelers and partners. Next one, please. So our new approach is to provide a weighted review system, which weights recent reviews more than older ones, meaning that it's still going to be over a period of 3 years. However, the recent reviews are going to carry more weight in the overall score calculation. The weighted score system would also reflect much faster the changes made by partners as to compared with the current system. As well as what we expect is at the end of the day, a better traveler experience and their expectations are met, which will lead to higher satisfaction and as a result, better reviews. Next one, please.
Laura, one other question. How quickly do you think that, do you anticipate the properties are going to see the changes in their review scores after implementing the improvements with the new weighted review system?
Right. It's challenging to specify a timeline for changes in the review score because this depends on many different criteria and how significant are the changes, how many reviews properties will receive. But what I can say is that the weighted review system that we are designing, it's designed in a way to reflect the improvements faster. So unlike the current system, which considers reviews from the past 3 years equally, the new system prioritizes the recent feedback. In this way, we ensure that significant improvements that partners are making are going to be recognized more quickly and bring a better experience.
Okay, cool. All right. Now we have time for a poll. I'm going to put in a poll now for everybody that we would like you to consider, and I'm going to launch it right now. And if you are watching, please do respond to the poll because we're going to try to give some live results back at the end of the session so that we can see what the results are from the poll. So please jump into that when you get an opportunity as well. Now, I think I may have jumped a slide. Let me just quickly go back to where we were. No, okay. So now 24 trends and strategies, guest experience, and the focus is on food and beverage. So Danica, back to you, if I may.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Laura. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Very appreciate that input. And I'll hand over back to Danica.
The questions are coming in thick and fast, Andre, so we'll
They
definitely
are actually,
have a
yeah.
lot of time. We can answer some.
I'd like to answer one. Actually, I saw one coming in for you, just going back to your previous slides, and one for you from Daniel Ruida in Salvador. Which is the source that you consider that has the highest influence in the future guests' bookings? Google Booking, TripAdvisor, and do the guests visit these sources in different moments of the customer journey?
Oh, great question. And I get asked that question all the time. So thank you very much, Daniel. It's really difficult. And, Booking.com has their research, TripAdvisor has their research, and Google has their research of how their reviews are so significant and influence the purchasing decision. Where we come from the world of online reputation, is it's really important to monitor all of your top 3 to 5 sources, depending on the volume. So you want to look at what sources are covering 80% of your reviews. Most likely, it's going to be Google, Booking, and TripAdvisor. And if the US we can throw in Expedia, and if you're in APAC, we can throw in Ctrip. So they are the main reviews. What's important is to not get caught up in the metrics. For example, I might see that 80% of my reviews are being left on Booking.com. Lots of my occupancy is coming through Booking.com. Don't ignore TripAdvisor. Just because I book on Booking.com and I leave a review on Booking.com does not mean I'm not looking at your TripAdvisor page, your Google page, or your Expedia page. So unfortunately, David, the right answer is to be looking at the top 4 sources, 3 to 5 sources, and make sure you're understanding what your guests are saying about you across all of those. And let's not forget the competitors as well. I was talking to a hotel chain that, very lucky for them, have a great book direct strategy. The majority of their reviews are coming on TripAdvisor and Google. They're not on Booking.com. It's really important that when they're looking at their competitors who have a huge presence on the OTAs, they're understanding what are guests saying on other review sites at their competitors' hotels that maybe they're not on. So hopefully that answers that question, Daniel.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Danica. And thanks, Daniel, for the question. And one other question I think I'd like to direct to Laura is from Joanne Taylor. When will the new weighted review system be implemented for Booking.com? Do you have a time frame that you can give?
Right. Thanks for the question. At the moment, we are running a pilot for Malta and Iceland, and we are going to have another pilot coming up. I cannot give a specific timeline just yet, but I'm looking forward to share that information with you very soon. Is a change that is going to come soon for all the properties globally.
Okay, cool. And I got one more question, I think a really good one before we jump further, from Mark Fancourt. Great to see you joining us, Mark. Can Shiji and Booking each comment on verified reviews in their platform and a breakdown by percentage within their overall review? Also, I'd like to hear a comment from each of the participants on the situation scenario and how they weight this situation among their overall feedback. Danica, would you like to start?
Yeah, great. Another great question. And it's kind of similar to another question from David at Stay City about having text and untitled reviews. The way that I always simply think about things is, if my mother comes to book at your hotel and she puts your hotel into Google, what is she going to see? Okay, some people read reviews. Therefore, if I see a negative review on Booking.com that is untitled with no text, maybe as an individual, that's not going to influence me. However, Andre, you might be somebody that doesn't read reviews and just looks at the total scores. Therefore, that untitled, untext review is still going to influence the overall score. So whilst this might sound like a sitting on the fence situation, it's really important to monitor all of your recent reviews. However, if you are based in a city centre, I have a property in London, Berlin, Sydney, Tokyo, or Paris, there's absolutely no point looking at a review that is 7 days old when I'm receiving 80 reviews a day. Nobody is going to look on page 15 on TripAdvisor and read that review. So again, it's quite a difficult situation for general managers and people that are looking at reviews. It's really understanding what the most recent reviews are always the ones that are going to have the biggest impact. So again, you need to be on top of all of the reviews that come in daily across those top 3 to 4 sources.
Excellent. Thank you. And Laura, would you like to add anything?
Right. So at Booking, we make sure that we allow verified reviews on our platforms. We have moderation policies, and we make sure that there are no fake reviews shown in our platform. So having verified and authentic reviews is one of it's a very important criteria for both travelers and partners. So we make sure that this information is accurate as possible.
Okay, cool. And I think one good question here, perhaps just to quickly cover before we do move forward, Fiona Fontes has asked, will Booking announce if this change via email to all the properties? Will you be notifying the hotels when this is available?
Yes, of course. We are going to have detailed communications, making sure that the change is well understood and comprehensive in order for all the partners to maximize its value. So there are going to be communications through different channels, including email and our partners' platforms, different web links, and yeah, so there are going to be enough materials for partners to be well informed about the change.
Okay, cool. Very good. All right, let's keep going. We have a time to stay with. So Danica, I'll hand over to you now for the next few slides.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Andre. So for those of you that are super active on the comments, I would like to ask a question to you. How important is food and beverage to you as we enter 2024? Because honestly, if I had a euro, a pound, or a dollar for every time a hotelier asked me about food and beverage, I would be a rich lady. Why? What we've seen, Andre, with our clients and the industry over the last 12 months is, when we look at the super high occupancy rates and the incredible ADR rates that everybody has enjoyed, it's natural to look at other revenue streams. And there are so many fantastic, iconic hotel brands, city center locations that have always just been bed focused for years. That's been the machine that keeps their oils running, the saying, you know what I mean? And what we've seen now is so many traditional bed-led hotels are really looking to F&B as a new revenue stream, as a new focus. And it's fascinating because that appears to also be in line with what the guests are telling us. So again, in that sample size of over 43 million reviews in 2023, food and beverage was actually the most spoken about concept across all online reviews. And just a caveat here, remember, this is taking hotel review listings, not restaurants. So it's insane to think that food and beverage is the most spoken about guest experience at hotels. It actually accounts for 14% of total mentions. Unfortunately, what we've seen over the last 2 years and predominantly in 2023, and that trend, FYI, does continue in Q1 2024, is inflation, inflated pricing, labor shortage, staff skills shortage continues to negatively impact the guest experience. In fact, when people are talking negatively about anything to do with food and beverage, it's taken off 1.1% of the GRI. Now, we know for every 1% increase in the GRI, it positively impacts ADR rates, RevPAR, and occupancy. So we know that F&B is an area that is just not in line with guest expectations, and guests are talking more negatively about the food and beverage experience. On to the next slide, please. And when we look at where is it or what is it about food and beverage that guests are talking more negatively about year on year? Here we can see a breakdown regarding positive mentions looking at the EMEA region. If you've downloaded the benchmark report, of course, you'd be able to see this in all regions. But we can see that there's real certain concepts that are really negatively impacting F&B. And that's really around room service, choice of menu, etc. And we've all been there, we've all been that guest that's wanted to order room service and have gone to the telephone and nobody picks up. That happens time and time again. The difference is we now have the technology in place. At Shiji, we have digital dine, mobile ordering, fantastic results. The difference is as a guest in 2024, when I want to order room service and nobody picks up the telephone, my tolerance is a lot lower than it was pre-pandemic levels. So what we're seeing is that guest expectations are not being met by the food and beverage offering around room service and menu. So that's a kind of a quick overview on what we're seeing, what's happening with food and beverage. Very important to hoteliers, very important to the guests, but still a bit of a disconnect in terms of meeting guest expectations.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Okay, let's keep moving forward. And we're talking about sustainability drives now.
Yeah. So just as F&B accounts for 14% of total mentions, sustainability only accounts for 0.2% of total mentions in 2023, which is really surprising because it's a huge topic for every hotelier, for every guest. If I've gone to a conference and sustainability is not an agenda point, I'm very surprised. So let's understand, well, what is it about sustainability that we're seeing at Shiji Review Pro? So next slide, please. Excuse me. So because guests just are not talking about sustainability in online reputation, we've seen a huge rise in the number of hoteliers include sustainability questions within their post-stay survey, as you can see on the screen. So we know it's important, but what's really fascinating is what we're asking ourselves, what we're asking our partners, what hoteliers are asking Shiji is how much are guests willing to pay? We all know it's important, but am I going to pay more? The other thing that I think is really interesting for hoteliers to think about is in our industry, so many of our sustainability initiatives are back of house. When it comes to waste management, when it comes to consumption, there's some fantastic innovations and amazing technology. But again, how does the industry, how do hotels make my mother aware of all of those sustainable initiatives that I don't get to see or touch as a guest? And I think this is a huge dilemma that the industry is facing in terms of raising the awareness of what we're doing at our properties to the guests and asking ourselves, does the guest care enough? So it's a really exciting topic. We've got Alicia here who's definitely going to talk about how Iberostar are leading the way. And we're really lucky at Shiji Review Pro to have certain clients like Iberostar lead the way and really walk the talk as well.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? It's a good question as well as how much does the guests really care about that? One other thing I want to just bring up before we move on to Alicia is that given the higher category hotels seem to have a greater emphasis on sustainability from their guests, do you have an indication of how these hotels are leveraging this trend to improve their services or their marketing strategies around that?
Yeah, well, if you look at the next slide, Andre, here is a breakdown of the sustainability mentions by the different segments. And we can see that there's definitely a little bit more coming from the 5-star segment. It's also very difficult with the rise of ADR rates. And when I'm talking the super ultra luxury, you know, the Peninsulas, the one and only, the Belmonts, it's very difficult to understand with the different guest segments what is sustainable. You know, if I'm paying £5,000 a night, I still want fresh towels, or do I not? Maybe that differs if I'm a 65-year-old guest versus a 25-year-old guest. So I think it's a real challenge for hoteliers to understand where they want to be regarding sustainability and where they're going to put their peg in the ground as such. What is important that we see from a guest satisfaction perspective is operationally, you have to be aligned. Again, it is not good enough to have a really cute communication card that says, hey, if you want to, you know, reduce water consumption and blah, 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 then, you know, hang the towels up and we won't replace them. And then as a guest, you do the right thing, you hang the towels up, you go out, you come back and you've got fresh towels again on your bed. That's the kind of thing that we're seeing, that again, the guest tolerance is just getting annoyed with that kind of behavior. So it's really important that whatever initiative, whatever sustainability initiative you have in place, operationally, your teams on the ground are aligned. And I have one more slide, which is quite fascinating, Andre, about sustainability and how guests are talking. So what we can see here is drilling down into those sustainable mentions. We can see when people are talking about nature, environmentally friendly, green, it's positive, super positive. Great, that's what we expect to see. However, when we look at concepts such as plastic, we can see there's huge negative mentions. So what does that tell us? That means that guests aren't talking positively around plastic-free initiatives. You know, a little bit like technology, and the same as price. It's very rare to see positive technology mentions. And now we're seeing the same trend. It's very rare to see positive single plastic use mentions, i.e., as a hotel, you might be completely plastic free, but as a guest, I'm not rewarding you and talking about that positively online. So that's another interesting disconnect here, just like with F&B that we're seeing with sustainability.
Yeah, well, we do still see a lot of plastic, don't we, around? All right, Alicia, you've been very patient. It's been wonderful that you've been here to join us. So I'll hand over to you now and put your expertise to the floor.
Thank you, Andre. Really excited to be talking about sustainability as it relates to the guest experience. And I think it's going to be a really nice complement to what Danica was just presenting now. And before we dive right into the Iberostar case study, I'd like to give a general overview of where we are today in terms of sustainability and guests, again, complementing what Danica was saying. And next slide, please. According to the Booking Sustainable Travel Report, which is a reference point, in the sector, 65% of guests would feel better about staying at a hotel if that hotel had a sustainable certification or a sustainability label. So, and we have seen this trend year after year that guests are demanding more sustainability, which is interesting, right? Seeing that most of the reviews are not focusing on sustainability. So an interesting trend to be exploring. And then, but the other flip side of the story, if we go to the next slide, here we go, just stopped. The flip side of the story is that trust in sustainability information is declining. This is data from the latest Edelman Trust Barometer that was released late last year that shows that people are trusting less and less companies, NGOs, governments, everyone pretty much when it comes to climate information. And not only pretty much experts and peers are trusted, but trust is decreasing across the board. And if we go to the next slide, we see that when it comes to how companies are doing or how people perceive that companies are doing, 65% of people surveyed in this trust barometer said that they think companies are not doing well at living up to their climate change commitments. And what is the top reason for that? That they are too focused on short-term profits. So again, we can see that duality here of increased interest in sustainability, but also decreased trust in sustainability information. And from businesses and from companies, we really have an opportunity to turn that around, to leverage that interest, but also increase that trust when it comes to sustainability information and sustainability commitments.
Laura, before you continue, just a quick sorry, Alicia, before you continue, just a quick question about the 65% of guests who say they prefer to stay at sustainable conscious hotels. There's common feedback, but are you noticing as well that they're actually willing to pay extra for that?
That is a really good question and a really tricky question. It is a question that we often get asked, a lot, and that there's a lot of talk about it in the industry. And it's tricky because there's rarely a black and white answer, and it depends on a number of factors: what your target market is, what your product is, and also we have to keep in mind that there will always be booking drivers that are very powerful, such as destination, location, recommendation, and it's very hard for sustainability to compete against that. However, something that we are increasingly doing at Iberostar, and something that is really important for us, is bring sustainability together with quality. Again, sustainability needs to add to the experience and to the product.
Yeah. All right, very good. Next slide.
Yes, please. So now I'd like to go over the case study of Iberostar and some insights that we have of implementing sustainability across our guest experience. So at Iberostar, we're really focused on driving a responsible tourism model. And in 2018, we launched our Wave of Change movement for responsible tourism, focused on 3 key areas. The first pillar is moving towards a circular economy, and we have some key goals here as for each area. All of our hotels have been free of single-use plastic since 2020. We're going to be waste-free by 2025 and carbon neutral by 2030. Then we also have a goal to have 100% of responsibly sourced seafood in our hotels by 2025. And finally, we have a pillar around improving coastal health, since most of our hotels are beachfront, so that we care for nature in those destinations. You can read more at waveofchange.com or iberostar.com/sustainability. In the interest of time, we'll be going straight into what some of the guest insights are regarding those pillars and how they connect to the guest experience. So next slide, please. So when it comes to a circular economy, something which is very interesting, and it's a very interesting discussion of how that relates as well to the reviews that Danica was just speaking about. We actually see that what guests are noticing more in our properties are that we remove single-use plastics and that we have waste reduction initiatives, which are actually the most recognized and also the most positively valued. And something that we really firmly believe and we start implementing is that plastics are not necessary to deliver an elevated experience, because we've seen over time that if done correctly, it can bring value. For example, walking into a buffet that has a lot of glass, ceramic containers, things like that, that really shows an elevated experience. And finally, also that as we start reducing our emissions and energy consumption, something we've done consistently over the past few years, that we can also provide a quality experience that doesn't impact the guests negatively. So following slides, which actually we are touching upon responsible seafood and gastronomy, which we were just hearing about food and beverage, as how important it is, that Danica was saying. And that something that we wanted to emphasize is that even if we have sustainable products like our seafoods, bringing that together with quality is essential. Because if you have a product that is great for the planet, but that doesn't necessarily taste good, then probably the guest will not be very happy about it, even if it's doing something good. So it's really important that the guest sees that connection with quality, that they see what's in it from them, what benefit they get. And also that idea of bringing those local flavors and tradition, that is also really helpful for us across our different destinations. And an example that I wanted to share as well, as you can see here on the top left of the slides, are show cooking spaces in buffets. Show cooking spaces we've seen are great places to communicate our sustainability actions. First, because guests have a little bit of time to stop and read about the product, but also they get freshly quality cooked seafood right in front of them. So it's bringing it together with that experience that really supports that sustainability awareness. So next slide, please. The final insight that I wanted to share, example from our experience, is something that we did in the Dominican Republic, which is quite unique. In our Iberostar Bávaro complex, 5 years ago, we constructed a coral lab, which is located in Apalapa on the beach. It's a fully functional lab to conduct research on coral reefs with our scientists, but also it's a space where guests can pass by literally from the room to the beach or to the pool, and they can go and see live corals, which is very difficult because, again, many guests do not dive and are rarely going to go underwater to see corals. So we are bringing the ocean, we're bringing corals to them, and they can see live corals, but also talk to our science team and see what corals are important and see that importance and see some of the ways we can support their protection. And if you haven't been there, we really invite you to go there and see, which is quite a unique experience. So
That's
next
nice.
slide, please. And some of the key results that we've had. So we see, according to our data from last year, that 75% of guests at Iberostar have perceived sustainability actions. Again, some of our most valued and perceived initiatives are hotels free of single-use plastics and waste-free policies. Just interesting, right? Because we saw from what Danica was saying that are not the categories that necessarily have the most positive reviews. But again, I think it also comes down to how that's executed and communicated to the guests, which plays a really important role. And also we saw that 60% of guests at Iberostar consider sustainability important to choose their vacations and their hotel, which pretty much matches the Booking Sustainable Travel Report data, which is quite interesting, right? That alignment of importance when choosing vacations.
Alicia, if I could just quickly ask you here, how can these insights that you're showing us right now guide the broader industry or hospitality industry in prioritizing sustainability initiatives that they should be implementing, considering that there's significant impact on the guest experience and choice? Now, obviously, you're relating this back to your properties, but from an overall perspective, hospitality-wide, what do you say would be a good way for hotels generally to approach this?
So something that we see is that the hospitality industry is very diverse. So products are very diverse, hotels are very diverse, target markets are incredibly diverse. So something that I would say is that it's hard to get all the data first. So I would say that starting by intuition, for example, think about what do you think your guests would value most at your hotels. We see that there's increasing topics that are important. For example, food and beverage. You can get guidance from overall industry data, which I think the data from Shiji that Danica was going through or from Booking are fantastic. But also would say that you know your product best. So think about what are those quick wins that you think you can implement, and then catch up with data as you can, right? Ask your guests, get your reviews, and see what of those things that are working are better for you. We know that there's a lot of awareness about that food and beverage is important, that also there's a lot of awareness about things like plastics. But again, I think what it's right for you might depend on the kind of the hotel you have.
Okay, cool. Very good. Thank you. Now, we are getting quite a lot of questions coming through, so we're not ignoring you. Thank you so much for the questions. If we don't get your questions answered in this session, we'll do our best to come back to you afterwards with a response. But in the meantime, I will also try to bring up further questions towards the end of the session when we have our Q&A. But just to keep things moving along so that we can try to stay to time, let's keep moving forward. So next slide for you, Alicia.
Thank you. And this is actually the last slide. So I would like to give 3 conclusions or 3 ideas so that hopefully you can take some of them home and implement them in your company. At first, we have a fantastic opportunity to bring sustainability and guest experience together. Data shows that interest is increasing and that also it's gonna continue being that way. So again, we have a great opportunity to do it in a way that brings value to the guest, which brings me to my second point, which is that the feeling factor is important. It's, as we have seen, the data shows, it's great that people know they are staying somewhere that makes a difference for our planet. But also, we must think about things that engage the guests directly. For example, in gastronomy, in excursions and activities, things that they can see, feel, and do directly so that they understand how it brings value to their stay directly. And then third, this is hard to do, but also really important that we have to aim to strike that balance between lack of awareness of sustainability initiatives. If your guests don't know what you're doing, is not great, but also if you try to communicate in a way that is too complex or sending too many messages at once, it's also not great either, right? So trying to strike that balance that works for you.
Okay, great. And I have one other question related to this. In terms of the strategies that you suggest for your colleagues in other hotel companies and independent hotels to clearly communicate their sustainability efforts in a way that resonates with their guests' needs and vacation experiences, what do you suggest is a good way for them to do that? What strategies would you propose for hotels to be able to communicate that message clearly?
First, I would say that an integration with the experience that is as seamless as possible is a good way to go. For example, we were just seeing the show cooking example at the buffets, right? When we have the sustainable product integrated there and people can see the messaging, but also see the product, right? So something that is not just saying we are doing this, but something that is showing and making the guest interact with that sustainability experience. Then second, language is really, really important. Sometimes we either see language that is too generic, which can lead to greenwashing and can lead to this mistrust of the information, but also information that can be too complicated and too technical, and that is not very understandable either. So again, speaking the language of the guest, really important. And then finally, something else that I'd like to highlight too is choose the places where you communicate very wisely. For example, if you choose a place that is really busy or maybe guests are passing by on the way to the pool or the beach, they will likely not be able to pay much attention. But if you choose a place, again, that example of the show cooking, or even that Coral Lab, places where people just have a bit of time to stay and and to read about what you're doing, and also even connect with the employees, right? Something that I would say that I didn't mention before, but a place where also employees can engage the guests directly.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Very cool. All right, so moving on. So thank you for your slides there, Alicia. That was really helpful. And Alicia, sorry, Danica, hand back over to you.
Thank you, Andre. And Alicia, maybe we can organize a Shiji Review Pro training at one of those coastal, the coral places. Please, I would love to be signed up to that. And I think just touching on Alicia's 3 takeaways, I think they were really, really helpful. And when you spoke about where to communicate, something that we're seeing at Shiji Review Pro, which I think is worth highlighting, is to really think about management response. So as a hotelier or a service department or accommodation provider, when I'm responding to my reviews, if we take F&B for an example, and somebody is complaining that the breakfast was really expensive, that management response is the perfect place to talk about how it's locally sourced, it's, bio ingredients, it comes from the local farm down the road because you're supporting, sustainable localization initiatives, etc. It's a great place to communicate, another great place to communicate your initiatives, and B, it really helps support perception of value. As a future guest, now I understand, okay, that's why the breakfast is 20 euros and I'm happy to pay for it because it's for a good cause. So I think these are the kind of tactical steps that hoteliers need to start implementing as well, if they haven't already. So that was, just wanted to drop that in there, Andre, sorry. So quickly to kind of summarize what we're seeing outside of F&B and sustainability is really going back to basics. As we've all seen, 2023 was an incredible year, in terms of the revenue metrics, really difficult on the guest experience metrics. So now, many C-suite hoteliers, when I ask the CEOs, okay, what's your focus for 2024? It really is going back to basics, making sure cleanliness, your rooms are tidy, making sure you nail that warm welcome experience, ensuring the F&B delivery is, meeting guest expectations. So, whilst we can get ahead of ourselves talking about AI and personalization, and which I'm about to come on to, this is just a reminder for all the accommodation providers today to make sure you have your ducks in row and you're covering the basics. So next slide, please. Because what I'm about to summarize is none of this matters if I've got an unclean room. Okay, so if you've got the basics of your guest experience nailed down, we now really need to start to understand, okay, what's the next steps? What do we have to do in 2024? And what we're seeing is the importance of customer experience is at an all-time high, with many hotel brands and accommodation providers prioritizing it as a goal. We have lots of anticipated trends, including hyper-personalization, how to leverage customer data in order to provide tailored experiences, to different guest segments, and how to really navigate the delicate balance between personalization and privacy. At Shiji, one of the things we're doing with our new property management system is single profiles, the ability within the PMS to have a single profile that travels with me around the world. This is where hoteliers need to be. 84% of customers are more likely will believe that personalized experience is as important to the actual product or service. So it's really difficult. As an industry, we know the importance of hyper-personalization. We know it's all about talking to the guests on omni-channel. If I come from Europe, I want to talk to you on WhatsApp. If I'm from the US, it's SMS. So we have that challenge of talking to guests across different messaging channels. Oh, I'm beeping away. Is that me? Somebody's... Sorry, can you guys hear the notifications going off?
Yes, but I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Okay. Is it all the messages coming in? Okay. The fire alarm, fire alarm. Well, let me round up. Sorry, I'm not sure where that's coming from. So this slide is really all about the importance of proactive customer engagement and personalization. So Andre, I'll pass it back to you and try and figure out where that's coming from.
All good. Thank you, Danica. All right, so we do have time for Q&A. We have gone over time, but there's a really good couple of questions here that I would like to bring in. And there's one here from Marinya Chaban. Thank you so much for your question, Marinya, and for joining us. And I think this is for Alicia. If Alicia could please share some best practices, and what solution would you suggest that the Iberostar company or what solution do you have at Iberostar to eliminate the plastic at the fitness centers and in the spa areas? She'd really appreciate some feedback on that.
Sure, happy to take that question. So in following the same policy that we have in other areas, we replace single-use plastics for materials that are, where possible, reusable or where possible, compostable. For example, in our fitness areas, before we used to have single-use water bottles for guests, but now we have this water fountains, just like we have in other areas, and we have glasses that are made of reusable materials that our guests can refill. So that means that we don't need any single-use plastics, which was the major source. And then in spas as well, we replace products that were plastic, for example, from everything we give the guests, even slippers, everything, with things that are either made of fabric, which are reusable. Because again, compostable is great to give things that, but where possible, the best product that you can use is that you can continue using for a long time and you don't need to discard in the first place. So for example, many of our products that we have that either, and like those that we give the guests that are made out of fabric or made out of reusable materials that we can wash and reuse. And as well, the products that we use that are also made out of glass or other materials, or even come in larger containers, because sometimes the issues with products, for example, we saw it at amenities in the rooms, just like we see with spas, that some things just come in really small bottles. And again, if you use something that is a large container that you can refill, and maybe you have it a refillable that is presented to a guest in a really nice way, again, it looks elevated, but you're avoiding so much plastic waste, or for example, something that comes in a glass container or another material. So those will be some of the ways we are tackling that.
Okay, great. One other question that I think is important. We spoke a little bit about communicating to guests prior to their arrival, but once they're at the hotel, can you share best practices on communicating your sustainability initiatives with the guests while they're actually with you in-house?
Absolutely. So going back to something else that I was saying before, is it's really important to communicate, and we have seen this over time, that communicating just passively reading is it's not ideal. What it's best ideally is something that you can engage with the guest directly. So I would say to think first, before thinking about communicating, it's more about engaging. How can you make them participate in that? For example, if they're staying in a room or going to a buffet free of single-use plastics and they are actively using those products, they're realizing, okay, there's no plastic here. This is a replacement and this is great. So it will stick more with them. The second part, and also something that I was mentioning before, was about choosing the spaces where you communicate wisely. Again, really important that choose a place where people will have time and will be in a good disposition to pay attention. Again, if it's in a place where if they are in a line or they're rushing, bad idea, right? A place where they will be relaxed and have time to read, the lobby, a restaurant, or a buffet, for example. And then the last thing that I would say as well is employees. So employees are our best advocates, right? For everything, for sustainability and many other categories. So if an employee tells you, for example, again, even the products in a restaurant, or as you check in, as they tell you, hey, do you know that we have these water fountains and all of this in the hotel, then it helps tremendously when it's that person-to-person contact and feedback.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And then we have another one from Fiona Fontes, and I'm not sure who this is for, but I'll probably give it to everyone. Don't you consider that the reputation of hotels is vulnerable to reviews from unverified sources? In the case of Google, reviews positively affected the GRI, but the opposite could have been the case. Are verified review sources more valued in GRI calculations? Danica, would you like to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Fiona, and thank you for all of your questions, by the way. Okay, so Google is a verified source when it comes to a review site. So it absolutely is part of the GRI and is a very important part of the GRI. I think it's really important to understand the difference between a verified and a non-verified review. So obviously with booking.com, it's slightly different. You have to be a guest in order to leave a review. But both with TripAdvisor and Google, they do have a lot of teams in place to look at fraudulent reviews. So if my advice to any of the hoteliers listening is if you see a review that you think is fraud, it's really important you can flag it within Review Pro, but it's really important to contact your Booking.com, TripAdvisor, Expedia, or Google account manager and get it deleted from the source. But yes, Google is a verified source, even though a review might not equate to a guest. That's part of the way that they absorb reviews, just like TripAdvisor.
Okay, very cool. Well, we have gone over time, but we've had some great responses there from people, so I wanted to make sure that we got them in. Now, I can also share quickly the results from the poll for everybody. Can people see that now if I show that?
Yeah, we can.
Yep, very good. So as you can see there, I might just quickly run through them. What is your level of responsibility regarding guest reviews? The top one being completely responsible. Very good. Nice to see. What factors or aspects of the business might be impacted by the new review score? Please select all that apply. That would be KPIs by the looks of it, and planning for 2024, also a good one. Now these poll results will be going out to everybody as well, right? After the session, Danica?
I think so, absolutely. Or we'll put them as a blog post. So keep watching Shiji's LinkedIn and yeah, you'll see them.
Yeah, very good. And then what are the top 3 potential challenges, concerns, and risks that you foresee based on this change? If at all, please select that apply. And the majority there were score fluctuation and unfair reviews. So they were the top 2 results from that. And then number 4, what kind of support do you expect from Booking.com considering the change? And the top one there was a guideline on how to work with the new score calculation, followed by the providing the data on review changes for property level. So that's interesting as well. And that was it. So that was the poll results. But yeah, as Danica said, we'll get more information on the poll up as a post for everybody at the in the coming days. And I think with that, everybody, we have come to the end of today's session. So again, I'd like to thank everybody who has joined us online and contributed to the comments and the questions, and of course to our amazing hosts. And this will be available on demand for people after the fact that we've gone live. So if you've missed anything or you want to go back over anything, you can always go back and rewatch it. Just check in on the Shiji Buzz website and the Shiji Insights website, and you'll get everything you need from there. So I think, ladies, with that all said, I think we can wrap it up and say thanks so much for joining us. It was great to have you. I really appreciated the time. And everybody, thanks for joining. And until next time, it's bye for now.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, Andre, for moderating.
everybody.
Great session.